everybody. This is Science Bridge webinar series. You can do it. And my guest today is Karen Cloete. Karen received her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy from Stellenbosch University. After that, she started her own private practice in Paarl, Boland Therapy and Learning Center, where she assisted children with learning and development disabilities. She then joined the corporate world and worked as a buyer for ShopRite checkers. She then joined the clinical research industry in 2008 as a clinical research associate at the IQVIA. Since 2010, Karen is working at Task Applied Science, a clinical research site. Currently, she is the head of quality, regulatory, and academy team at Task. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation with me, because I think that since your background is not directly related initially to clinical trials, I think that it's quite important to show to students that you can always turn around your career in different directions. So I'm really excited that you're going to tell us more about your background. So maybe let's start there.
Yes.
So you started as the occupational therapy specialist. So that's what you studied. So what was your education? Was it any related to clinical trials?
No, not at least. So when you study occupational therapy, that is what your aim is just to become an occupational therapist. I did not know when I started or even worked as an occupational therapist that clinical trials exists in South Africa. And that was foreign to me. And yeah, I didn't know anything about clinical trials at that stage of my life.
So afterwards, you just continued working as the occupational therapist. So what type of experience did you gain through starting your own practice?
I think I learned a lot there. One thing that was difficult, and I think it's still today, is that you're a very limited number of occupational therapists. You're only like 20 in a class, but still work was very difficult to find after completing my degree. And the only thing that I could do was then I took out a loan from a bank and I bought a property in Paarl, and me and two colleagues started a practice. Most of us then started practice with children, so the competition was very big, but I lasted 5 years. And in that 5 years, I've learned to, because that's something that I also don't teach you as a student, how to manage a business, how to do private practice management. I had a secretary, you had overheads, you have to get marketing, you have to get clients. So it was a lot of hard work, but eventually I left that due to, at that point in time, medical aids didn't cover occupational therapy, or they covered it in an umbrella. There wasn't something like cash practices, so the cash flow was extremely difficult. And when I decided that I really gave it my all and it's not working, I just wanted something like 8 to 5 job, a secure salary income. So that's when I started to just send out my CV to anywhere in the world just to get a job as something else.
I can imagine, even from my own experience, working as an entrepreneur is a difficult
Yes.
path to choose, and that finding that cash flow point is never easy, especially at the beginning.
Yeah. And it depends on the kind of person you are. If you're a structured person and you want to know what you're going to earn and how much you're going to have, it's very challenging to be an entrepreneur. yeah, so that was not cut out for me.
No, not everybody is. And that's us also important thing to point out, that even if you try and it doesn't work out, it's fine. It's absolutely
Yeah.
fine.
Now I can say that if I have to do it all over again, I would do it totally different. So, and that's also not to, I don't think, to tell yourself that I cannot do it, but what have you learned? And maybe if you have the opportunity again, like I have now with the academy, I've learned a lot and I'm doing things differently.
I actually recently found out information that there is a study apparently for the best age to become entrepreneur, and it's 45 apparently. So I guess you're learning so much between end of your studies
Yes.
to actually
Yes.
45. That's the moment when it's the
Yeah.
best time to become entrepreneur. So, well,
Then I'm there.
well,
Yes.
that's all the best for you. So maybe we're gonna try to chat about further, because ShopRite Checker is working as a buyer there. I'm sure that it gave you some experience that you potentially are using now, perhaps in your career.
Yes. So what happened after, like I said, I decided to end my path with occupational therapy, although that was really my passion. Um, at that point in time, being your own boss, you think you know everything. And I send out my CV telling people I'm a marketer, I can do accounting, I can run a business. And I don't know, somebody believed in me and gave me an opportunity. And I started actually as the personal assistant to the CEO of Checkers. And after a year of that, it was them that gave me the opportunity to be and to learn how to be a buyer. So it was internal change of job, and I then got in-house training to be a buyer, and that opened a whole new world to me. As occupational therapist, you're very creative and you don't do a lot of accounting. So the left side of my brain, I think, developed when I started to be a buyer, and that is a very hard world. It is a corporate world. I learned about office politics. I didn't know what that meant when I was in my own business. And you traveled a lot, you saw the world, you had to work with millions of rands of budgets, do your own forecasting, do your own stock taking, go out to stores, do your own merchandising. So yes, I think I grew up a lot in those 7 years, and just realized that if you put your mind to something and you want to learn, you can learn a lot.
Well, that means that you never actually end learning, and you can
No,
always get new skills in a new stage of your life.
absolutely. And that also taught me that, and that is definitely a message of today, whatever you have studied, it's never a waste. I still believe till today, and that is how I found my way back into clinical trials. Then I had to have some kind of medical degree. So my occupational therapy degree helped me to come back into the medical world. But how did you get your degree? You had to study, you had to work hard, you had to put in effort, you had to maybe fail and start again and then succeed. So all of those skills and attitude that you had to have to get your degree is something that you always need in any job you do. So if you have the opportunity to grow within a company, you must take it, and that will maybe take you to your next path.
No, absolutely. And speaking of your next path, so what happened that you transferred back to academic, well, maybe clinical research? How did you manage
Yeah.
to get your foot in the door in the first place?
That was talking to people. I was at a stage of my life where I then started a family, and the traveling of the buying, being away from home for 3 weeks on end, was not working out anymore. And I missed the medical field, where my passion was, and I wanted to return, but I did not know what to do. And my neighbor was a physiotherapist, and she introduced me to clinical trials. She told me that there was something like clinical trials, and I was very interested and wanted to know how can I get there. And there was only one contract research organization at that time, and that was Quintiles, or as you introduced it, as IQVIA, that changed their name. And they took in trainees. So I had to start all over again, a huge drop in salary. And I started out as a trainee CRA. And I've done that for about 2 years working with them. And then the task where I'm currently working, Prof. Diaken asked me then to come and work for them. And that is where I am still today.
Okay, so what type of experience did you get as the clinical research associate? Because that's definitely different role than a buyer and different role than occupational therapist.
Yes. So as I said, I started all over again. There was, and still today, Task Academy is also teaching good clinical practice. That is one of the guidelines and principles in clinical trials that you must know. And that is a short course that will teach you and just introduce you to clinical trials. So I completed that at Quintiles. And then after that, it was in-house training. You had to just learn on the job. And luckily you have senior CRAs that taught you the ropes. And then as I went out, I saw and I got exposed to clinical trial sites. So my job was to go out to sites on behalf of the sponsor, and you audit the sites and see that they are following the strict protocol as how the study is written. So, and you write to sponsors, so your exposure and your networking a lot. And that is how I got introduced to Dr. Diaken. And then he wanted me to now come and work at his site. So that is now a different angle for clinical research. Now you will be at the site where the participants are. And he wanted me to then be their internal monitor, to just check their quality of work in-house. And that's where I then started my career and build it up to be the quality manager. And then later on, I got the regulatory side as well. And in 2017, as you know, I started the academy where I want to train people on clinical trials.
So essentially, you were first working as a quality assurance specialist, and you would, what does it mean actually? Because I can just guess, but I think from you, it's going to be sounding the best. So what do you do as a quality assurance specialist?
So if you are a CRA, contract research associate, or me working in-house looking after quality, one of the aspects that you are responsible for is every study comes with a protocol. So the sponsor writes the protocol and they want this study with their new medicine to run in a certain way. There are certain amount of visits, so many people that you need to enroll. There's inclusion criteria that the participant needs to meet, and none of the exclusion criteria. And then the participants get consented and screened for the study, and they enter the study, and then they start to take this new medicine. And you as a quality assurance professional needs to ensure that the site includes the correct people. So you verify that the person that is included is correctly enrolled and that they're getting the medicine when they need to get it. And you report all this adverse events or what happens to the participant, you report it to the ethics committees so that they can keep an eye on the safety of the trial. So you have a broad oversight and you need to ensure that the study is going according to plan and that there's no deviations, so that internationally all the data that is recorded is ethically and recorded with integrity, and correctly and accurate, so that the sponsor can eventually get the drug to market and it gets approved. And when the data is reviewed, they can see that the data is accurate. So it's a lot of auditing.
Yeah, just wanted to say that it's, I guess, the accounting background and auditing background really helped you with the job.
Yes, you need to be very detail orientated. Yeah.
But you don't work directly with patients. You work with the data and all the paperwork.
Yes. So that is also something that I think people need to realize. And maybe it's important to job shadow someone, is to know that there will always be a side of your work that you don't like and a side of the work that you do like. I actually like to work with people, but a lot of my work is paperwork. But being a manager, now I get to work with people again. And the academy side, which we brought in now, is teaching. And teaching is a big passion of mine. So yes, I have a part of my job that is highly administrative. You need to get that done. But then you create something in your job for yourself that you really love, and that is your passion, and that just overshadows the part maybe that you don't like.
And when you were doing the quality assurance, you had to initially have the good clinical practice background, so that course had to be done. And for your regulatory job, did you have to have extra certification you needed to get before?
Well, that was also a challenge. No, there's unfortunately nothing, no pathway in clinical trials is taught at this point in time at universities, or there are short courses out there. And that is a reason why we started the academy. So the regulatory team was actually managed by a different colleague, but she left. And I was asked to take over the regulatory side. I knew nothing about that. So it was in 2017, and I was thrown in the big pool. It was difficult, but again, you have to learn on the job and you have to make it work. And yeah, I luckily had people around me that could support me. And it took about 6 months for me to really get behind what regulatory is and what you need to know. I still today have a very good regulatory manager that helps me to manage that team. So yeah, it's a team effort, but there's nothing else you can go and learn how to be a regulatory manager in a clinical trial. That is where you need to understand everything about ethics committees, and you need to learn about the South African Health Regulatory Authority, SAHPRA, that approves all drugs, how to communicate with them, when you need to, and how to set up a study. And a lot of project management, again, came into play. So yes, there's elements of skills that I already had, but the knowledge was something that you just need to learn on the job.
So let me just be clear. Students who graduate with their masters, let's say in immunology, could apply for this type of jobs, or is there certain initial background that they would have to satisfy possibly?
Yes, clinical trials is a very difficult industry to enter. Everybody wants experience. I think it's with every other kind of job, and that is what makes it difficult. My best advice would be that you have to do at least a good clinical practice course and maybe a good clinical lab practice course. Task Academy offers both of them. It's just a one-day online virtual training. We are busy to make an online course. That at least will give you an entry-level foundation, one-day knowledge, just that you understand a little bit about clinical trials. I do feel it's a little bit like the chicken-egg effect. I would have wanted those people to work in clinical trials a little bit and then do the course, as it would have made more sense. but unfortunately, SAPRA doesn't allow that. You have to have GCP before you can work in a clinical trial. They will not approve you to work in a clinical trial without that. So it is a certificate that you have to have.
So if I'm aware correctly, if I have been informed correctly by some of my former colleagues, if they work at a clinical trial during their PhD, for instance, PhD rotations, they can do those courses during their PhD, and then they would be fine for applying for such jobs, correct?
Yes, yes.
And now moving on then to academy, because I know that this is your baby, aside from your
Yes.
actual baby. And I would like to know more, like what does the academy do and how you can assist students and other companies that maybe want to get into clinical trials.
Yeah. So the academy started in 2017, where I just really felt task. We are a clinical research site with 6 locations in the Western Cape. We have 2 pharmacies. We have a microbiology lab. We have a regulatory team. We have a quality team. We have a finance team. We have a data team. We are sitting with a world of knowledge and how to do trials. And we can showcase that by having immersive learning programs. So I really wanted, and because I struggled so much to get into this industry, and still today, when you ask people, how did you get into this industry? They say, it's always by chance. It's always by, I had this professor and he told me about it, or like me, I had a neighbor, but you don't know how to enter the world of clinical trials. So the first thing we decided to do is to get our good clinical practice course accredited. So in 2017, we got accreditation, and every year we get the course accredited by the HPCSA. And then also, so that is where you start. So if you go onto our website of Task Applied Science, you will see on the academy side, there's the courses that we offer, and the one is GCP. And the other one that I really would recommend is good clinical lab practice, because the protocols these days are so complex, and how you need to manage your samples, because the nurses draw blood samples. They need to know how to process these samples. And those are the basic entry level courses that you need to then put on your CV. And at least when you do an interview, you know what clinical trials is, and that you can immediately be approved by the regulatory authority to work in clinical trials. The academy, my dream is beyond that. My dream is to really have an online course where after you've done the course, you can be found competent to work in clinical trials. So GCP is your learners. You will not be able to drive the car yet. You will need to, it takes about a year of working in clinical trials to really find your feet and to understand the language and to really grasp protocols. It's really complex. And to do research as a PhD and a master's and to do clinical trials is not the same. It's 2 different worlds. If you ask a nurse, or a doctor, they will tell you to be a nurse in a trial and to be a nurse in a hospital, it's not the same. So that's what I want to teach. I want to show people by using real life examples, by talking to our nurses and investigators in our courses, that the people can experience trials online, and that they can really see what the world is about. And that if you enter it, it's not this new world that you're entering and not know what is next. So there's a lot to teach, but we are busy developing it. And hopefully by next year, end of next year, the whole course can maybe go online.
Okay, that's fantastic. And so GCP takes 1 day, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually not such a long time out of your research
No.
to devote into
Yes.
developing your skills. And
Yeah.
what type of key words are there to look for in clinical trials? So it would be, let's say, quality manager, Our regulatory manager, clinical nurse, clinical trial doctor. What other
Yes.
jobs are
So
there?
if you look at, there's a lot of role players in clinical trials. If you just look at the site, so this is where the participants will be seen. There will always what we call investigator. That is your medical doctor. So in clinical trials, we call this person the investigator, and then he or she will need a coordinator. So that person really managed the trial site. At task, we call them site managers. And then we also have our nurses that are in the research field. We call them clinical research coordinators. They coordinate one study and they see that the participants are recruited, consented. You put the data into the ECRF or the database. And then behind the scenes are a lot of administrators. So you will have clinical trial administrators. You can have matric just to do that. And then also learn on the job. And then your quality assurance people would need some kind of medical degree, or lab technicians also work a lot in clinical trials. Anybody like a dietitian, a psychology degree, physiotherapy degrees, they all can enter the world of clinical trials, being for quality assurance, or when you work at a contract research associate, that is the middleman between a sponsor and a site. That is the people that come and audit the sites on behalf of sponsor. You can, those people can also become a CRA, clinical research associate. Then obviously in a big company, big pharmas, and so even task applied science, we have a lot of IT people, because everything is getting electronically, clinical trials, electronic informed consent, electronic data capturing. We have a lot of statistical people that work with us, people on data management, finance. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes done, project managers in clinical trials.
No, this is fascinating, completely different world. And
Yes.
to my knowledge, there's quite a lot of clinical trials going on in South Africa. So it's actually
Yes, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you will see all the trials listed that is going on in South Africa currently.
Yeah, so people, if you need a job, try to get there, just get the right course beforehand.
Yes.
And going back to your career shortly, so how do you feel that your background in occupational therapy is kind of related to your current job, and does it even relate to?
It's a difficult question. I don't think it directly relates. I don't use my knowledge of occupational therapy at all. But I believe today that the course itself was a very good creative course. And it also taught me to be extremely organized, which I was not before. We always had to write treatment programs for patients, and you had to write out long-term goals, short-term goals, medium goals. And I could remember asking myself, why do I need to do all of this? And today it gave me extreme structure of how to think, how to tackle a problem, how to think about a problem, how to do problem solving. And that is something I use every day. There's not one day in clinical trials that's the same. You're working with participants, even if I'm not working with them directly, the sites call you and you need to think on your feet. There's problem solving, the participants, there's something wrong. How do they need to attend to it? Where do we need to report it? You are a very like a go-to person. So you will need to have the knowledge. You will need to think on your feet, be flexible, be adaptable. And that is something I truly think occupational therapy taught me.
And what would be like your final advice for students who are maybe afraid of graduation and afraid of looking for jobs?
My advice will be, I do understand it is difficult. You are leaving a world as you know it, and you don't know how to start or where to go. The first thing I would say is you are definitely not just your degree. The person you become to get that degree, that is important. As I said before, hard work, dedication, to manage your time, the stress that you've gone through, the long hours of studying, all of those things make you ready for the job industry. We do a lot of interviews and I appoint a lot of people, and I can say from that experience, please apply with a professional curriculum vitae. Do a specific to the job cover letter. Don't copy and paste from a previous cover letter and think that we won't notice it. That is something that for me is just a no-no. When you go for your interview, be on time, never not just pitch up. The industry is very small, and if you want to make a success of it, do it the first time around very professionally. Do your research on the company. Know the company that you are applying for. That makes definitely a good impression. Understand the job that you are applying for and take the opportunity to ask questions. And then lastly, I would say when you get the job, it's going to sound hard, but nobody's looking out for you. You're responsible for your own development. You're responsible for your own happiness, and take opportunities. And if it's in a big company, jump around from department to department. To in-house training is for free, and teach yourself all the skills and knowledge in that job that you can, and you will most likely end up doing something that you did not study for, and that is okay.
Well, I think those are great advice for a lot of students. And just remember that it's okay not to exactly work in the field that you studied for, because
Absolutely.
just the beginning of your career, when you are thinking what you want to do, is completely something different that you're gonna retire with. So don't worry,
Yes.
it's a journey, not a destination.
Yes, and I strongly believe that not one thing that you did was for nothing. It always put you up to set you up for something that will happen later in your life. So, I mean, now from starting as an occupational therapist, we had to be very creative. And now, many, many years later with the academy, I need that creativity. I need that again to build this new entrepreneur thing. And having that 15 years ago and now, it's two different worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure throughout your journey, you learned all those skills that you are using now, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Karen. And if anyone wants to find you, where they can look for you?
Yes, so we have a direct email of academy@task.org.za, or our task website, which is www.task.org.za. There you can learn about the company, all the studies that we do. You can look at our services that we provide other than just clinical trials, and also meet all the team, the finance team, the data management team, the quality team, regulatory team, the academy. And you can also then contact us if you're interested in the GCP or GCLP training. And we also provide HIV pre and post testing counseling training. So yeah, that's it. That's just the start of your journey in clinical trials.
You heard the lady, it's just the start. I'm gonna definitely add all those contact details in the description of this video. So thank you so much for today.
Thanks for having me. I think you're doing a great job trying to build the bridge between studying and going into the industry. It's much needed.
Thank you.